Entitled Grandma locked me in a shed for not making her breakfast. Back around 2014, I was living with my mom and two younger siblings in St. Catharines. It's a small town, and we moved there because, at the time, my mom's health wasn't as good as it is now. Plus, her family lived there, so we moved closer for more help and support. This is where Entitled Grandma comes in. From the moment she brought my Mama Bear to Canada, she has treated her like Cinderella. Mama Bear had to cook, clean, and take care of my uncles. Entitled Grandma didn't even help Mama Bear with school or buy her things she needed. Mama Bear worked 2 jobs just to buy school books and clothes, and Grandma wasn't kind to her own children. She had 3 sons, and 2 of them moved out the moment they had a stable income. They moved out because of her controlling nature. The only one she was nice to was the younger brother, and he's in the army and hasn't lived with her since he was 23. Point being, Grandma likes to be in charge and in control of everything, and will ridicule and punish you if you don't follow what she says. She's also a retired cop, which I'm still not convinced she wasn't asked to leave. Anyways, I was around 14 or 15 when my mom had to go back to her home country to deal with some business that I can't remember. But because she couldn't leave me and my younger siblings by ourselves, my brother was 11 and my sister was 8, I think, she had asked Entitled Grandma to look after us. This was around the time where it seemed like she was trying to be a better person, but we were wrong. So we ended up staying at her house while my mom was gone, and for exactly 3 days, she was decent. Until the 4th day, that is. Now, just a little thing I forgot to mention, this happened in winter, which is important. So on the 4th day of our stay there, I was down in the basement watching some movies on the VCR. I didn't have a laptop, iPad, or iPhone. All I had was a flip phone for emergencies, which was up in the room charging, so I didn't have it. All of a sudden, I heard pounding footsteps from upstairs heading in my direction. The floors weren't very insulated, and the stairs creaked, so you could hear when someone was going up or down. Now, the way her house was built, it had 4 levels. The basement led to 3 doors. One was a bathroom, the other was another bedroom, and the third was a room that led to the backyard. Anyway, apparently Grandma was furious that I wasn't going to be like Mama Bear and ask her what she wanted for breakfast, and basically wait on her. She was so mad that when she got to the basement, she took me by the arm, dragged me up the stairs, took me outside in nothing but my jeans and t-shirt, and locked me in her old metal shed. I was in there for 2 hours, and as the town is near the water, winters are no joke, so I was freezing. I ended up putting my bare feet in an open bag of dirt just to keep warm. I was let out by one of my uncles, the older one, who we'll just call Cool Uncle. He had come over to visit the 3 of us, and when he didn't see me, he asked Entitled Grandma where I was. And this effing witch actually said, and I remember this clearly because Cool Uncle told me, "Oh, I forgot, I put her in the shed this morning. She's in there." She forgot me for 2 hours, in a rusted shed in the effing cold for 2 hours. Cool Uncle was so peeved when she said that, but not as much as Mama Bear, who gave Entitled Grandma the tongue lashing of the century. Entitled Grandma then tried to tell Mama Bear that I'm not a child and shouldn't be lazy sitting around watching TV when I should be in the kitchen making breakfast and helping with dinner. She also never liked the fact that I'm a tomboy. Before this incident, when I was even younger and was over for the summer, she hated the fact that I would rather go outside and roughhouse around with the neighborhood boys rather than staying inside and being a proper lady. Well, tough luck for you, Grandma. I'm still a tomboy, and I took construction classes in high school. Now I work in a factory and have my forklift license. Proper lady be darned. I'd rather be happy than miserable. After that incident, we never stayed at her place alone. We did have to a few years later, but my mom was with us, so nothing like that ever happened again. If you're wondering why we keep going, well, unfortunately, before COVID, Entitled Grandma's house was where all the Thanksgiving, Easter, and Canada Day festivities took place. Don't ask me why. What a horrible thing for this original poster to have to go through just because her grandmother didn't feel like microwaving her own toast. Canadian winter is no joke. Even a big city with salted roads like Toronto can get knee-deep snow in the more suburban areas, so I can only imagine what it was like right by the water. Not only was Grandma's behavior way out of line, but she could have actually put the OP's life in danger. I'm not exactly sure how old this grandmother is, but it's crazy that anyone can still think women are supposed to act like Cinderella. Wasn't Grandma a kid back when women were swarming factories to build weapons for a global conflict? Wasn't she a kid back when women were working sweatshops to keep the Industrial Revolution alive? I'm pretty sure industry was a thing in Canada, Probably not Newfoundland, but I'd assume everywhere else. The point is, this woman should know her grandmother is good for a lot more than scrubbing the floors and steaming cabbages. It's just great news. The OP doesn't have to stay there anymore. Never go back, OP. Leave that hoser in the past where she belongs. Entitled Vegan says, I can't eat meat in my own home. I have an uncle who I'll call Hal. He's 2 years younger than me, so we pretty much grew up together. Hal is a good guy, but when it comes to his wife Cindy, he simply has no backbone. They have a 6-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old son. Almost a year ago, Cindy decided that they were going to go vegan. It wasn't a discussion, it was a declaration. Their house was going animal-free. Hal and the kids went along with it, no major protests, though Hal would still eat meat when he was not around her. This summer, they sent their son to camp for 8 weeks. While he was gone, they wanted to take some time and go away for a week by themselves, so they asked me to watch my little cousin for a week. I already have 6 of my own kids living here, so heck, what's one more? Sure, she can stay the week. So they head off to somewhere in Florida, and I go about my babysitting duties. I understand and respect their dietary choices, and I have been providing my little cousin with 100% vegan meals. But yesterday, I posted a picture to Instagram of a black bear steak I made for myself. Well, Cindy calls me flipping out for cooking meat while her daughter's under my roof, accusing me of trying to convert her back to a meat eater. She then tells me, not asks me, not to make any more meat until they get back and take their daughter home. I told her that she was being ridiculous, and that while I was happy to feed her child vegan meals, I will not be told what I can and cannot eat in my own home. I'm making chicken fried venison with sausage gravy and biscuits for my girlfriend, kids, and myself for breakfast this morning, and I'm making my little cousin blackberry oatmeal and a fake egg omelet with peppers, onions, and mushrooms. I'm going to post a pic of our breakfast to Instagram and then turn my phone off, because I'm a jerk now. You're really both jerks, OP. Look, the only thing that the mother really did wrong here was not voicing her intentions before she and her husband left for the vacation. Cindy should have made it clear from the get-go that she wanted her child in a meatless home, which, by the way, is not your place to question because it's not your child. You say that you respect it because you've been giving the kid vegan meals, but it's pretty obvious that you've simply assumed Hal must have no backbone for not protesting it. He still eats meat, but he respects her rule about keeping it in the house. That's between them. By not telling OP ahead of time what she wanted, Cindy missed out on the chance to get a babysitter who might have been more willing to follow her rules. However, while OP definitely has the right to eat what he wants in his house, intentionally posting pictures just to mess with someone and stir up more drama is the most childish thing to come out of a house that currently has 7 actual children in it. I'll put aside the fact that both the animals he's eating in this story had been out of season for months at the time it was posted. He might have a big freezer, or it could be related to the fact that this OP has a number of questionable posts on Reddit, and it's possible he's just a loser karma farmer. But if any of this story is true, it sounds like the only person in the family who's not a jerk is Uncle Hal. Paranoid customer almost gets me fired when he threatens to sue the company over a missing newspaper. I used to work in customer service for a newspaper. It was a good newspaper. I loved this newspaper. I used to read it for free on my computer whenever it was a slow day. Last year, this one customer calls in and starts right away giving me attitude for no reason at all. He had a problem with the fact that I had to verify his information. We had to do this in my company because the customer's profile wouldn't pop up on the screen without it. So we had to enter a phone number or a name of some sort, or an address if we couldn't find any other information. I explained to him once I found his account that it was standard company policy to verify the information so we know we have the correct account. He kept screaming at me and saying, "You already have the account, so just get on with it." When I ask him what the problem is, he then goes on a rant about how he's the only minority in his apartment complex, and he isn't getting his paper. Standard company policy states that you have to report the missing paper when it doesn't come after a certain time past when it was supposed to have arrived. There are 2 reasons for this. First, if we reach our cutoff time, we can give an extra credit of 1 day to make up for the paper being missed. That means you get a 1-day extension on your bill when it comes up for renewal. The second reason is that if we haven't reached our cutoff time, we can immediately issue a redelivery that same exact day. This guy had barely called in except a few times to report his missing paper. He wanted to be reimbursed fully for his missing paper. He wanted to be refunded the entire amount he paid for his subscription. I told him that since he never called in most of the missing papers, the most I could do is give him credit. Again, that was company policy. He wasn't happy. He again went off, telling me again that he is the only minority on his floor and that the paper carrier was discriminating against him. I asked him if he had any significant proof of the carrier specifically targeting him to not receive his paper. He couldn't answer the question, but kept going on that he had been targeted for being a minority. He then threatened to get a lawyer involved. I honestly had no clue if he was being serious or not, so I didn't think anything of it. He just said he was getting a lawyer involved. I thought, at worst, he wanted a lawyer as intermediation. He didn't flat out say, "I'm going to sue," he just said he was going to get a lawyer involved. Fast forward to about 2 or 3 months later, and the lawyer is finally brought into the picture. The newspaper is fuming at me because I didn't bring it to their attention. Again, this was my first time dealing with someone who said they were going to bring up a lawyer. Plus, he had no evidential proof that he had been targeted. The newspaper ended up meeting his demands and reimbursing him just so he wouldn't sue for discrimination. I think they went as far as to fire the carrier for not delivering the paper to him. The fact is, there was no account of him calling on any repeated daily basis for this issue. It's really hard not to sympathize with both parties in this story. On one hand, I kind of get why the customer didn't feel like he should have to call customer service every single day. If the missing paper was an ongoing issue, it seems unfair to put that much responsibility on the customer who's been wronged by the carrier's mistake. And while I usually don't like people being too quick to pull the race card because it detracts from legitimate cases of discrimination, it sounds like he felt targeted because he was the only person in his building having this problem. As for the original poster, this must have been really hard for him. Anyone who's worked in customer service must have been cringing at the really obvious mistakes he made. But there are a couple of things here that he clearly didn't know. First, when someone threatens legal action against you, always tell your boss. It doesn't matter if you don't think they'll ever do it in a million years. Second, after you tell your boss, step away. Do not talk to this person any further. If you say even one thing wrong, no matter how small, then whatever consequences or threats the company suffers are going to come back to haunt you. And the OP did say something wrong. He's not a lawyer, so he shouldn't have been the one asking the customer for evidence of discrimination. Hopefully he won't have to deal with this again. But if he does, let's hope he goes in better prepared. My narcissistic father wants sympathy for joking about his own nephew's recent passing. My cousin, my father's nephew, passed away yesterday unexpectedly. My father hadn't spoken to him or my aunt in over 20 years since they moved out of the state. He views himself as the most successful sibling of all my aunts and uncles, so he therefore refuses to reach out to most of my extended family. We just got the news last night. I asked my father if he called my aunt to send his condolences, to which he said that he couldn't because he hasn't spoken to her in so long. He sounded sad over the phone, but he fakes empathy and sadness all the time in situations like this, so I don't think it was real. He still hasn't called or messaged her. This morning, he made a joke about messing with his employer by requesting bereavement leave. He works in an essential position, which requires him to be physically present or else work doesn't get done. They've had issues recently where my father takes days off unexpectedly because he feels like he doesn't get treated fairly at work. In his defense, the employer usually retaliates by unnecessarily giving him more work and creating a toxic work environment. Anyway, I thought the bereavement thing was just a joke. He went to work today and actually requested it, and the employer verbally denied it. He came home today and immediately started complaining about how his employer is heartless and how this is a personal attack against him. I wanted to call him out for pretending to care about my cousin's passing and about using the opportunity to benefit himself, but I just kept it to myself. Maybe he really was grieving after all. I don't think so, but who am I to say? I just said nothing. He then got upset that I didn't respond to his complaints and that I didn't take his side. This post is kind of all over the place. On one hand, I'm not sure this original poster's father should be defended for constantly bailing on work. If his position is essential and he's not taking it seriously, then his boss isn't the one creating a toxic environment by punishing him for it. On the other hand, it's not this OP's place to assume his father isn't grieving. People grieve differently, and some people will seem like they're doing fine or even joking around when they're utterly shattered. And when a person loses a family member but feels like they can't grieve with the rest of the family because there's too much distance, especially if they think that distance might be their own fault, then they're going to have feelings about that. But in the end, it's good this OP didn't try to call his father out. It's obviously a bad idea if he really was grieving, but even if he wasn't, the OP would have just gotten the same reaction as his father's boss. Because if the dad really is a narcissist, it's basically impossible to call those people out for a lie. Their basic mindset will be, well, yes, I was lying, but you didn't know that, so I'm still a victim for you not believing the lie. What's most interesting, though, is that his employer denied him bereavement for the loss of a family member. Can he actually do that? What do you think? Leave us a comment and let us know your opinion.